we now have gotten to the point where we have the land, okay, and God puts some people in charge of the land, kind of gives them a king. Well, at this particular time that we're going to talk about today, there's a man named King Saul. Now, Saul was in charge of the land and protecting. He had an army of soldiers and that kind of thing. And if anybody would try to come in, you still have all of these different groups still trying to come back into the land, then Saul would take his armies and they would go out and they would, protect everything. Well, apparently Saul, who was put there by God, messes up. And when you mess up, sometimes you can't continue to do the job that you're doing, okay? Because you can't be trusted to do that job. So King Saul was doing a really good job, and then he messed up. So God has somebody different to put in that place. At this current time, it is King Saul, but he has told him, you messed up, King. So somebody's going to come take your place. Well, King Saul is still doing his job. In the meantime, there is a man way over here, and his name is Samuel. And Samuel is told by God that there's a new king out there. And he says, Samuel, I want you to go to that house and I want you to say a blessing for that person and anoint that person. Now, that simply meant that they would pour some oil over their head and then they would say like a little prayer thing. And then that was it. That was all you had to do. So Samuel says, okay. So he goes to that house. Now, before I tell you any more about the house, I need to tell you why Boaz is sitting on my shoulder, okay? Because it's Boaz and Ruth. Now, do you remember Boaz and Ruth? Okay, if we stop and remember Ruth for a second, that was that lady, that was that love story. Oh, it was so good. Okay, so it starts off with Naomi and her husband and their two sons, and they have to leave the land that they're in because there's a famine. And so they go over here. And they live here. Well, then the boys get married. Ooh, so now we got 6 people. And they're living in a place that they're really not supposed to because of the fact that there's a famine in the land. So there's a famine over here. So they have to stay over here. All right. Now, so then, of course, Naomi's husband, he dies. Okay. So now we're down to 5. And then guess what happens? Then the sons that she has, remember, they died. Okay. So now we're down to the ladies. Okay. Now, Naomi tells the ladies, I can't take care of you anymore. I have to go back home. And so since I'm going back home, you go back to your homes. You see, back in Bible times, if your husband died, then you would like marry his brother. And so since there are no more boys, she can't have any more babies because she's old and her husband's died. And even if she did have another baby, they would be too young. Okay. You can't marry a baby. Girls, you can't marry a baby. So she says, you go away back to your homes. Okay. Well, one of the ladies, she said, okay, I'll go back to my home. But Ruth said, no, I don't want to go back to my home. I want to stay with you because I know about God and I want to be with you. Your God will be my God and your people will be my people. So then Naomi and Ruth, they go home. Okay. And then now Naomi, she's a little older. And so she said, I'll stay here. And Ruth said, I'll go out and find some food. So she goes out to other people's houses where they're growing things. And it was allowed that you could go behind whenever they were taking the stuff out of the field after they finished growing it, that you could pick it up. So she goes and she picks up all kinds of things. Well, then she meets, there's this guy. Whoop! There's this guy, since Naomi's at home. There's this guy. Okay. And this guy says, ooh, who's that? She's pretty. Who is she? And they said, that's Ruth. That's Naomi's daughter-in-law. And he's, ooh, let her get food. So she gets food. Well, she comes back home and says, Naomi, look, I have all this food. And Naomi says, where did you get it? And she says, I got it from Boaz's house. And she says, oh, that's good. Keep going back there. And so she does. Ooh, and she gets food. Oh, look, there's so much. Yay, it's so nice. Oh, we have plenty to eat. Yay, that's so wonderful. Okay, in the meantime, Boaz is saying, ooh, I like her. Okay, so we get to this point, and Naomi says, Ruth, you need to go and you can get married to him. So that was that weird thing. Remember that thing where you go and you lie at his feet? You lie at his feet while he was sleeping. She lay down at his feet. And then he was supposed to cover her up, and that meant that they were going to get married. And he says, no, you can't be here right now, because there's somebody else that should marry you, and it's not me. So go home and wait there, and here's some food, and I'll let you know what happens. And so that's what happens. So Boaz goes, and he says, hey, dude, do you want to marry her? And he says, no. So remember that weird thing? He gives him his shoe. Okay, so then he goes back, what? I have the shoe. And Ruth says, oh, what does that mean? That means that I can marry you because I have his shoe. Okay, so then they all go, and yay, there's happiness. Okay, Boaz and Ruth, they get married. And then look at my shoulder. They have a son named Obed. Obed. Yeah, isn't that cool? Okay, like Obed. Okay, so Obed. And then Obed grows up and gets married. And then he has a son named Jesse. And then Jesse gets married, and he has, the Bible says, 7 sons. Ooh, 7 sons. And then I put their names. Hang on, I'll be right back in a second. Okay. So here we have, oh, Miss Coon, I need tissue. Okay, so here we have these 7 sons. Oh, you can't see the 7 sons. There we go. Okay, Eliab, Abinadab, these are cool names. Shimea, this one's tricky. Nathaniel, yeah, not Nathaniel. Radii, maybe, okay. Ozum, look at that, Ozum, that's cool. And then David. Isn't that interesting? Woo, crazy names to say. And then you got David. So these are the 7 sons that Jesse has. Now, God says to Samuel, go and to Jesse's house, and one of those sons is going to be the next king. So Samuel says, okay. So he goes and he knocks on the door, and he says, I need to see your sons, because one of them, God has told me I need to anoint as king. Oh, well, that's exciting. So Jesse then calls his sons. Okay, here we go. And so now I went through and I found the list they're going from oldest to the youngest. Okay. So I got David's name covered for it now. Okay. So Eliab, he comes first. He's the oldest. And he comes and he stands before Samuel and says, okay, this must be it. And then God actually says to Samuel, no, that's not him. And Samuel's like, well, he's the oldest and tallest, and he looks good. And God says, I don't look on the outside, I look on the inside, and he's not the one. So then Abinadab comes up next. No. Shimea? No. Nathaniel. No. Radii? No. Ozum. It's got to be Ozum. No. And Samuel says, God, I've gone through all of Jesse's sons. It's got to be one of those. No. So Samuel turns to Jesse. Do you have any other sons? Because God has not said it's any of these. And Jesse says, well, I have one more son. I have one more son, but he's young. He's my youngest son, and he's out taking care of the sheep. You need to go get him. I need to see him. God has said, I need to anoint someone here to be king, and he has not given me any yeses to any of these men that you have brought before me. So I need to go see that son. So Jesse says for one of his helpers, go get David. Now, David is the youngest son. So, I don't know, young teenager right now. And he's busy. You want to know what he's doing? He's a shepherd. He is out taking care of the sheep. Last night at church, well, for you, it would be, this is Monday. So I did this last Thursday. So that would have been Wednesday night. We were reading about how Pastor may mentioned, he had asked us a question about one of the hardest jobs. We were reading something, and apparently being a shepherd was a really hard job. And that's what David was doing. Now, it doesn't look hard right here in this picture. He's sitting around with cute little sheep around him, and he gets to play them some music on his harp and whatever musical instrument they carried. That looks like a pretty easy job, right? Apparently, it's not a very easy job at all. Apparently, it was rather tricky. It's hot, it's lonely. You got to take care of these sheep. They're always getting in trouble, doing something wrong. You got to keep your eyes on everything to make sure that they're all safe. And you got to move them around because sheep aren't really that smart. And so they just stand eating in the same spot. If you didn't say, hey, sheep, move over and eat some grass in a different spot, they just eat the grass from the same spot until there was no grass left. And if they saw water, well, they go get water. And somebody started walking around. Well, I'm going to follow him. And they could walk around. I mean, these are this is a hard job. And he would play the music to kind of keep himself entertained and also to make noise so that nothing came and bothered and to keep the sheep calm. You don't want your sheep running away, so you keep your sheep calm. I mean, there's lots of things that a shepherd had to do. And so that was David's job. And so he was sitting out, might have been now in our picture here, we see him sitting underneath the tree. Let's pretend it's lunchtime. And he was taking a break because he had been walking for a while. And so he was sitting and resting in the shade because it's a little bit of a hot day. And he was just having a few moments to himself. And his sheep were sitting around him quietly. See, they know his voice. Did you remember that? The sheep know the shepherd's voice. And so you could take your sheep. So all of you boys could take your sheep. Okay, let's say that all of you have 20 sheep. And you could all get together in a big, huge circle and have a little bit of a sheep party. And when you were done with your sheep party, then you'd start going back to your houses. And all you'd have to do is say, here, sheep, 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 sheep. And your sheep would come to you. Okay. Alexandra's sheep wouldn't come to you, Isaac. Only your sheep would come to you. And Noah, your sheep are over there. And so all you got to do is say, sheep, 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 and make noise. And then they come right to you. And they get away from Sammy's sheep. So you had all of this going on. So yeah, there's a big, hard job here. So he's sitting and he's resting. There's something was going on. So he needed to take a break. And then he hears somebody coming, running. David, 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 where are you? And so David goes, here I am, coming out from behind the tree. What's up? What's up? What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Is there something wrong with the house? You got to get back to the house. What do you mean I got to get back to the house? You got to get back to the house right now. There's some man there by the name of Samuel, and he says that he's got to see all of Jesse's sons, and everybody's come through, and they need you. What do you mean they need me? What do they need me for? I don't know. You got to come on. You got to come on. You got to come on. And so he goes back to the house, and we will find out what happens to him later. Bye.